Welcome to Off Panel. Welcome to Off Panel. I'm your host, David Harper, and this week's guest is the writer behind the upcoming Image Comics graphic novella Bingo Love. It's T. Franklin. Thanks for coming on, T.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
So, today we're going to be talking all about Bingo Love, which, as I said, is your upcoming graphic novella that's coming out at Image on Valentine's Day, which I love. I love that it's coming out on Valentine's Day. But before we do, I want to start at the beginning, as I often do with new guests. So, at what point did you get interested in comics as a reader, and what appealed to you the most about the medium?
Well, comics was a part of my life since I was a kid. I remember being, you know, put in a closet with a bunch of comics while my cousin was watching me and his girlfriends came over. So that was sort of like, all right, pay me in comics, I'll be quiet type of a deal. So I've been reading comics forever. Uh, as years went on, decades. You get married, have kids, money gets tight. You can't, spend obscene amounts of money on comics.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta feed the kids or buy comic books. So something unfortunately had to go, and it was comics. I would have to say about maybe 2013, I want to say
Mm-hmm.
ish. Um, I you know, get divorced. My kids are teenagers and a full blown adult now. So, I decided to get back into comics. And it was I remember Wonder Woman was kissing Superman. And that just totally intrigued me. The cover was done by Jim Lee. The lasso was wrapped all around them. It was so beautiful. And I just wanted to know more about this story.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I got back into comics again after X amount of decades. Um, I'm not a huge Cape fan, but I do like Cape comics. But I wanted something different to read at this time because my taste had totally changed, back from when I was a kid.
Sure.
And my local comic shop, the Joker's Child in Fair Lawn, New Jersey, one of the staff members had given me Nail Biter by Joshua Williamson and Mike Henderson.
Mm-hmm.
I love horror. Serial killers is my jam. And, when I read this story, it was so freaking awesome. And I just, you know, I was sold. I think they probably were on issue 5. I bought all the issues, the first printing, and it still is one of my favorite comics to this day.
I feel like a town full of serial killers, if you're a serial killer fan, is really, really up your alley.
Seriously, like what's in literally what's in the water? Like what's going on? And it was just one of the best things ever. Josh is so freaking amazing. And it's really weird because I 2014, I think it was, I launched a website where I wanted to cover comics and just entertainment in general.
Mm-hmm.
But I noticed that there was so very few creators of color, and the stories that featured characters of color were just all written by white men
Mm-hmm.
with a few white women sprinkled here and there. And it just was mind blowing that, especially now in this day and age, there are no or very, very few books written and drawn by creators of color.
Mm-hmm.
So I just, what I was doing on my site just led to me being extremely vocal in the comics community. And next thing you know, I created Black Comics Month, which went viral, and I had so many creators involved, and I don't know what happened or literally how it happened, but Comic creators were starting to peer pressure me to write comics. Like, like you. Let me listen. I went to interview Josh, right?
Williamson.
Mr. Nailbiter himself. Like the whole, oh my god, I love your stuff. Like fangirling. And I
Mm-hmm.
went to interview him. I think it was his maybe the 11th issue. It was the issue where Finch was biting nails, and it just intrigued me. Like, what the hell are you doing? What, is he a serial killer now? Like, what are you doing, Josh? I had my questions panned out and everything. I go into the little booth that Image had at New York Comic Con, and I'm like, hey, Josh, so what's going on? And before I even got to even finish my sentence, Josh is like, hey, you want 4 pages?
That's awesome.
Exactly. Like, I cried. I was looking like a fool. I didn't even answer the question. I literally said to him, I don't know how to write. He's looking at me like, are you freaking serious? So it was so weird how it became, how it came full circle for me from going into the comic shop to being completely smitten by Nailbiter. And now I have a 4 page story. My first published story was the Nailbiter.
That's
And
amazing.
that's just so, Gail Simone was my editor. Gail Simone was my freaking editor. Like, what? And Juan Ferreira, the artist on Colder and Green Arrow, was the artist on my story. It was so wild. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's my A plus. That team is A plus, and they helped me curate this 4 page story. It's so freaking wild. So that's sort of kind of how I got into comics and writing, just by being a very outspoken journalist. It's weird. I love it.
That is amazing. I am curious. So you grew up reading comics, then you had the big gap, and then you came back in 2013. Like once you started getting back into it, and you were like totally buying in on Nailbiter and everything like that, did you have interest in writing comics, or is it something that just kind of
No,
came to be?
they forced me. They forced me. There was like straight up peer pressure. Alex DeCampi, there was um an open call for an anthology that was going to be on Kickstarter, the Elements anthology
Yeah.
by Tanika Stotts. And Alex DeCampi quote tweeted and said, "Hey T, why don't you do this? You know you can." And I'm like, bitch, did you just put me on the spot? Wow. So now everybody's like, yeah, T, yeah, T, yeah, come on, T, come on. So literally, I was peer pressured into writing comics.
That's
So
amazing.
I had no interest at all in writing. Like I still to this day don't even think I'm like, I'm not a writer, but apparently I am. So yay, Alex and Josh. If it
Yay.
wasn't for them, Bingo Love would not be here.
That's incredible. I'm kind of curious. So you started with Elements and with Nailbiter and everything like that. Was when you were first diving into it, were you intimidated? How did you figure that out? Like, did you turn to your friends like Gail and to Alex and everyone like that, or was it more just like you just diving in and figuring out like I have to figure out how to do this?
It was a lot of uh, diving in,
Mm-hmm.
um, a lot of Googling how to write a comic script.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Jim Zub. He definitely helped with he's got some links on his website and some
Yeah.
tutorials on how to write comics. So he definitely helped me trying to figure out how to write a script because I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I remember when I first handed in my script, there were so much red marks, and I was like, Jesus Christ, this is taking me back to high school and college, where you hand in the paper and the grammatical errors underlined and this, and oh my God, it was like I was freaking out, and I didn't. When I was writing in the beginning the stories, I had so much action going on
Mm-hmm.
in like one panel, and it was like, how are they supposed to draw this? So it was a tip. If you can't do it, if you're one person and you can't do try to do all the things you have your one character do by yourself.
Right.
And if you can't do it, then that means they can't be drawn.
Right.
Like you can't pick up the cup, pick up a newspaper, and write something at the same time, like something like that. Like you can't do it all. You've got
Mm-hmm.
two hands, and the panel is going to be even less, even though you have two hands. Like you can't do any and everything. So it was a very trying time, but I managed to get it done.
Right.
The Elements anthology ended up winning it was nominated for an Eisner, and it won an Ignatz Award.
That's
So that
awesome.
was pretty cool to have something I wrote in, that actually won an award. And then you have Carla McNeil. She reached out to me to write a one-page story for Love is Love.
Oh.
Yeah, so that, you know, my story was in something that was on the New York Times best-selling list, and that also won, awards too. So it was really, and that literally was what, four, five, what, 16 pages? That's
Mm-hmm.
it. That's it. I'm like, that's all I've written was 16 pages. And two of the stories were in books that won awards.
That's a,
So
and the
it's
third
crazy.
one was your favorite book.
Yeah.
That's
That was at that was the first published and the second script I wrote.
wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
you always hear it's like when people share their breaking in stories, it's like one of the commonalities is that there's no commonalities. It's like everyone has their own route when they're breaking in, but you have, I mean, first three projects, that's serious business, and then the fourth one is an
Bingo love.
80-page graphic novella that's all your baby, and that's amazing. Like I would say congratulations, but yeah, congratulations. It's one hell of a
Thank
start to your
you.
career.
Yes. And to find out, that it just got a second printing. So it's so freaking bizarre that this is, yeah, I still can't believe it. Like, I'm just completely overwhelmed from the Kickstarter, which we was funded in 5 days,
Mm-hmm.
to this. This is so what people want to read about queer grandmas. Like, it still freaks me out. Like, y'all really? What? You sure? Right
Well,
title? Okay,
yeah.
cool.
I mean, that is there's something to be said about the fact that I mean, you were talking about yourself. Like you went in, you were initially interested in this comic with Wonder Woman on it, and then you got into Nailbiter. But the thing is like you like Nailbiter because it was a horror comic that had serial killers that appealed to you. But it's just like I think Bingo Love speaks to an audience that isn't really represented in comics, and as you well know. And like that's a huge part of it. I mean, didn't you triple your Kickstarter goal?
We almost did.
Oh, okay.
We were like a little bit under 60 grand. Yeah.
So I know you've recounted this many times. Really quick, Bingo Love, for listeners that don't know, is T's new graphic novella about Hazel Johnson and Mari McRae, two young black girls who meet, fall in love, and then have to deal with the complications that brings to their lives in 1963 and beyond. How was that? Was that okay?
Yep.
Okay.
That sounds good.
All right. So I've read other interviews with you, so I know you get this question a lot. But I have to ask, like, what was the origin story of the comic? Like, what made this? Was this something that you wanted to tell even before you got into writing comics, or is this something that just kind of came as you started thinking about it as like a newfangled writer and storyteller?
Neither.
Neither. All right.
Neither. Literally, I was watching a commercial and it had two older black women and they were sitting on some brownstone steps tying their shoes, and then they started to do some sprint walking,
Mm-hmm.
and an older gentleman was walking the opposite way, and they looked back at him and they had these flirty looks on their face and giggling like high school teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally just zoned out, was like, huh, what if it was a girl they were looking at?
Yeah.
What if they liked each other? Ooh. And then I just took out my notebook and I just started to jot some notes down.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say that was early January last year.
Mm-hmm.
After fleshing out the ideas and doing an outline, I put out a call on Twitter and asked if anybody wanted to, draw a romance book. And there were tons of people who answered, and I ended up with Jenn St. And we actually announced February 14th that this book was happening and we were going to Kickstarter. And we launched March 15th. So literally, I would say, let's say January 9th ish, maybe January 9th, I found Jenn, sent her emails. We started collaborating back and forth. I found Joy, the colorist. Joy found the colorist. And by February 14th, we already had a few pages done. We had the promo work and everything.
Wow.
So it was a really, really quick turnaround for me coming up with the idea, finding someone, and going live. It was so quick.
That's
Yeah.
incredible. I love Jen. Jen is just absolutely phenomenally talented, and she just kills it on Bingo Love. I'm kind of curious, like, in your mind, what made her such a perfect fit for the book? And beyond that, did the book evolve at all once you had her on board and like her visuals were in your head and everything like that? Did it change at all?
Originally, it was supposed to be just a little quick one shot, 60 pages.
Mm,
That was it. Because want, I didn't know what was going to happen.
right.
I did not realize that this was going to be something this big. And then finally, when I started to write the story, we got to 80 pages. But then as the Kickstarter progressed and it just blew up, I added on I wanted to say like every 3,000 or 5,000 we got, I was going to add on another 8 pages
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted to give the people, more stories. Um, Jenn is, whew, boy, I can't even. Jenn is something else. Let me tell you. Jenn's work is freaking magical. I love her work on Gem and the Misfits holograms. Like it's so beautiful. It's so pure. And what I saw in Hazel and Mari was just not cartoony, not, semi realistic art, but I just wanted something that was in between
Mm-hmm.
and that would give people joy when they saw the images. And Jen's work is that. Well, for me, anyways. And she can handle different body types because, as you see, Hazel is not a skinny mini.
Mm-hmm.
Hazel is beautifully, pleasantly plump. And I wanted seeing her, seeing Jenn draw. I don't know anybody's name off the top of my head because I know it, but I'm blanking out. A few of the girls in Gem, they're not small. And damn, what's Stormer? I think that's her name. I think her name is Stormer on in Gem and the Misfits. I think it is. But either way, I wanted somebody who can handle different body types and that could age them up.
Mm-hmm.
And Jenn did such an amazing job from turning the Hazel and Mari from 13-year-old girls all the way up to 90-year-old women and watching their grandchildren and great grandchildren evolve and age was just, Jenn did such an amazing job.
Mm-hmm.
He is so freaking talented.
I think the thing that
Seriously.
stands out about her work to me, especially on Bingo Love, is there's just so much life to it. It's just like it feels like these characters are alive in like the best
Yeah.
possible way you can with art, and especially with Mari and with Hazel. But at the same time, it's just like all the characters, like you were talking about the family as they age themselves. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah. She's done her. The expressions alone.
Right.
I mean, that one image where it's one of my favorite pages when Mari and Hazel finally reconnect
Mm-hmm.
and they kiss. And you see Hazel's daughter with this look of disgust on her face. She is just mortified that her mom is kissing another woman, and it cracks me up all the time. And then on the opposite side of of Hazel's daughter, you see this church lady in this church hat, and she's just so happy and like just so accepting of the fact that these two women are kissing. She is so freaking talented, and she can draw the hell out of some people. Oh my goodness. I'm blessed.
So I did want to ask about, one thing that I thought was really interesting about the comic was how there are little story beats within Bingo Love that are going to be expanded elsewhere in digital first stories with people like DJ Kirkland and Marguerite Bennett working on them. Like, how did those come together? Was that purely like a Kickstarter related element?
Yes, definitely. Because you want to give people incentives
Of
to
course.
continue to, pledge to your Kickstarter and to reach a certain goal. So the two goals were a story by Marguerite Bennett and Asia Kendrick Horton. They're doing the honeymoon story. And then you have Sean Pryor from Action Labs, Force and Cash and Carry, and DJ Kirkland doing The Secret
Mm-hmm.
bonus story. I didn't want to. I could have. I could have told the. Now, mind you, all of this is Image Comics is not around. You
Right.
get me? So Image Comics was not even a thought. No comic publisher was even a thought of. So when I did these Kickstarter bonus stories, it was literally for people on Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't want to divulge this secret when enough I didn't have enough money
Mm-hmm.
to pay everyone.
Right.
So I figured with the bonus stories, I can tell them because, like Marguerite, she's like, you don't have to pay me. And this is this is the
Yeah.
Marguerite Bennett, you know? And she's like, yeah, see, I'll help. I had so many awesome freaking comic creators from Gail Simone, Scott Snyder, G. Willow Wilson, Kieran Gillen. They were offering their time
That's amazing.
to help me reach my Kickstarter goals. Like you could do not a Snapchat, pardon me, a Skype session with Gail Simone and Kelly Sue.
That's amazing. Those are
I
pretty good
just,
rewards.
oh, okay, okay.
I do have to ask
Like,
about the
hello.
I do have to ask about the Kickstarter experience because like anybody who's crowdfunding anything knows that it's like a stressful experience.
Ugh.
I know that you funded it within 5 days, so I guess the initial hurdle was taken care of pretty quick. But at the same time, like, how was that experience? Was it pretty anxiety ridden?
Listen, honey, I still have about 3,300 books in my garage.
Yep.
Okay. I had 1,950 backers, and that's from Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
I have another 500 or so with Backer Kit, which is an extension. So when the Kickstarter closed, you could still pre-order through Backer Kit.
Mm.
That's about another 500-600, right? Then I went on a Bingo Love pre-order tour from on the East Coast, and that was another 15 to 1,600.
Jeez.
Okay. Yeah, that's a lot of freaking fucking books, man.
You're gonna need a bigger place just to afford all the books.
Listen, all the books I had 5,000 books delivered to my home.
Mm-hmm.
Right, I had this big freight truck pull up in on my house, and my block is really small. So the truck basically took up all the freaking width of the street, and they came at about 8, 9 o'clock at night. So my neighbors are like peeking through their windows. They've got the doors open. They're like, what the hell is all this noise? Because I live in a very tiny, quiet town.
Mm-hmm.
And all you hear is the rumbling of this freight truck. And they're like, what the hell is going on? So they open up the back of the truck and they take out 4 pallets
Wow.
and they bring 4 pallets into my garage. First, I'm like, oh, this ain't gonna fit. And I'm like freaking out, like, shit, I'm really gonna have books in my home. But thank God they all fit. And it's so wild because I turned into a bookstore. I'm like, how am I gonna get all these books out? I still have tons of books in. I'm still listen. I sent out about 1,000 books in the first week,
Mm-hmm.
and it literally killed me. I'm disabled, and doing so much work like that, it stressed my body out so much. Almost ended up in the emergency room. My
Mm-hmm.
legs had swollen up twice this limit, and I literally couldn't move. And at that point, I said, I can't. I'm not going to force myself to get everybody's books out. They have to, hopefully understand. Some
Mm-hmm.
people are understanding. Some people are very rude, very, very rude. They're very racist and there's bigots. And, just last week, somebody created a Twitter account calling me a scammer and saying
Jeez.
how I just took everybody's money and didn't deliver anybody's books. And I'm like, yeah, well, retweet, retweet,
Mm-hmm.
retweet about so many people who've gotten their books. And it's like people are just Bingo Love wasn't accepting as it was.
Mm-hmm.
Um and then when it was announced that Image picked it up, it got worse. A lot of people just are very racist. I have been called the N word so many times. I have had death threats and rape threats
Jeez.
over Bingo Love, because this is a book that doesn't belong in comics. It shouldn't be made. And I, it is very taxing and just, it's very a lot. It's a lot. It
Mm-hmm.
can be very emotional and just wreak havoc on your mental health.
Yeah. I
And
from I know some people who have done Kickstarters, and obviously you have a much more extreme experience because just I I'm sounds like Bingo Love because of it's representing people who aren't often represented in comics, brings out the worst in a lot of people because it's already there. But I mean, like
yeah,
even with Kickstarters that are pretty like just like there was somebody I knew who was making a comic that it wasn't even a comic, it was kind of like a design of like another world that was kind of done by a comic artist, and people were it's I think 2 years after the book was funded and everything like that, and he has been sending out updates, and I just feel so bad for him because he's trying his best, but he can like barely afford to like live his life and to do everything else, and he just feels like he's failing everyone and everything like that, and no one understands. And I sent him an email because I just didn't think that he was probably hearing something like this, and I told him I was just like, I support you because because you're a creator, and because you're a creator I believe in, and it's like if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, but I still believed in what you did, and I appreciate you corresponding with people and everything like that. But
mm,
yeah, I'm so sorry you had to go through that because it's just I don't know, like I feel like Kickstarter sometimes bring out the worst in people.
yeah. A lot of people, they feel entitled, and I
Yes.
understand it. I get it. You helped make this happen, but just because you helped me make it happen doesn't mean that you are my boss.
Right.
It doesn't mean you can demand, like, I got demands. Bitch, where the fuck is my book?
Mm-hmm.
Like, these are emails that I'm getting. And I'm like, for one, the books didn't even come yet.
Right.
Okay. And if Image did not pick up Bingo Love, I wouldn't have the books yet because they would be coming from overseas.
Right.
So I gave everyone their PDFs a month in advance.
Mm-hmm.
They were supposed to come out this month. I wanted them to come in January because I wanted to get a good amount of books out
Sure.
into, to the backers' hands. So when Image picked it up, I'm like, oh, y'all just fucked up my timeline because now I really got to hustle and make sure everybody gets their books.
Mm-hmm.
So I sent the PDF out a month ahead in November, and December. maybe seventh or ninth, something like that, the books came. So I wanted to, originally in the Kickstarter, I said everybody would have their books before the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
But now here we are, and it's almost a month later, and I'm still sending out books.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not Amazon. 90% is done by me.
Right.
I've got Erica Schultz, who is the editor on Bingo Love. She's also a writer for Charmed, and she does some Dynamite books. And my kids. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. So I'm sorry you didn't get your book. Like literally December 1st came and all the emails started. Where's my book? Where's my book? Where's my
Mm-hmm.
book, bitch? I'm like, dude,
I wonder,
chill the fuck out.
did they like set calendar reminders or something to, like, harass the tea
I have
today
no
or something?
idea.
I don't.
It could for all I know, because people have been so rude and hurtful. I have refunded people's money
Mm-hmm.
because I'm like, yeah, you're not gonna talk to me like this. I don't think you're talking to, but refund, because your little $25 is not worth all this harassment.
Yeah, and that entitlement.
At all. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just kind of astounding. I mean, I don't think people think about the demands it asks, like Kickstarters or just making comics in general, ask out of people, not even beyond like the physical element, but like the mental element and like just the stress that comes with it and everything. It's just kind of astounding. There's not a lot of empathy in the world in a lot of places, but I feel like there's sometimes less in comics.
Yep.
So I did want to ask about publishing Bingo Love with Image. How did that end up happening, and what made Image the right fit for the book?
Um, I would say on, what was it? March 14th, Dynamite gave me a contract to sign with them.
Mm-hmm.
And we were launching on March 15th. So that was kind of weird and funny to me, because I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I might have something here. Because they were sort of kind of like, hey, come on, why don't you sign with us? Like a little bit of pressure. And like, hmm, I might have something here.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize how big of a thing I had. And 5 days later, we were funded.
Yeah.
Um, Dark Horse also sent me a contract. And my thing with Dark Horse was I just didn't want to sign with them because of a certain sexual harasser and biter was employed.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really kind of torn. I did want to sign with them, but I was really torn. Just to, I didn't want my book associated with said person.
Sure.
Um, but I was leaning towards them because I didn't want Dynamite's deal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Image Comics, I had nobody. I didn't know anybody at Image. Not a soul. On Free Comic Book Day, I was signing at Escape Pod Comics with Donnie Cates.
Mm-hmm.
Donnie and I struck up this conversation. He's like, well, what's going on with Bingo Love? What are you going to do with it? I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
Dynamite or Dark Horse? Like, those are my options, dude. I don't know. What about Image? I'm like, I don't know anybody at Image. He's like, well, you do now. And I'm like, okay, Donnie, cool. He's like, casually, I'm gonna introduce you to my buddy Eric. I'm like, all right, cool. I had no idea who the fucking Eric was.
Yeah,
I was
you're
just
like,
like,
who's
all
Eric?
right,
What is
whatever. Who's
this?
Eric? Your buddy? All right, let's make it happen. I get this email from Donnie, and he includes Eric fucking Stevenson. I'm like, that's your fucking buddy? Oh
You're like, you should have mentioned his last name to begin
shit.
with.
Like my buddy Eric, no big deal. Like, oh, I know, it's my buddy Barack. Like, who's that? Like casually mentioning somebody's name. So what the fuck am I supposed to write? Like, I'm trying to find my voice. I'm like, dear Mr. Stevenson, I appreciate, like, I don't know how to write to this guy. Like, what am I supposed to do? So I sent him an email, and instantly, like he instantly got back to me. He's like, yeah, we would love to have Bingo Love at Image. Let me send you a contract. It was just that quick.
Wow. I've
And
heard that before about him.
yeah, he's this is listen, I didn't know, and it just totally took me by surprise that just one email and I had a contract. And of course, getting it to my lawyer and trying to work out all the schematics because you know, it's a Kickstarter and I wanted Image or whoever I went with to understand that my Kickstarter people come first
Mm-hmm.
before anybody else. Because if it wasn't for them, you guys wouldn't have known about the book.
Right.
Because if I would have went to you guys and said, "Hey, I've got this book," they would have said no, or I wouldn't have heard back.
Yeah, like the Kickstarter was kind of like proof of interest, I guess it was, and it funded the
Yes.
creation of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's how I decided. And then of course with Image, they don't own your rights,
Right.
so that was sort of kind of like a no-brainer
Mm-hmm.
to go with Image.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very, hello, second printing. So it was obviously a good choice
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
me to go with them.
It was really funny. I actually got that second printing email as I was preparing for this, and I was just like finishing up my questions. I'm like, oh man, that's perfect. But it is, that is kind of like the amazing thing is like you have the Kickstarter that went almost tripled what you were going for. You have like the book being rushed back to print before it's even like released yet, which shows like the demand is going through the roof. I mean, like that's amazing. But like, what do you think it says about the importance of representation comics that both of those things happened? That there's just so much interest in this book.
Listen, I need the white gatekeepers to do better. That's really it. There was I I had heard that my book wasn't going to sell because I had been trying to pitch a second book,
Mm-hmm.
and I was hearing over and over and over again, well, we need to see the numbers on Bingo Love before we give you a book. I'm like, what are you talking about? I can sell books. Look what happened with Bingo Love. And it
Mm-hmm.
was, yeah, but that's a Kickstarter. I'm like, dude, I have raised about 90 grand,
Mm-hmm.
90 grand on my first book between Kickstarter, backer kit, and me going to all these conventions. About $90,000. And you're telling me it doesn't count. Yeah, those aren't really book sales.
Mm.
What? I've got that 5,000 books in my garage. Those aren't real?
That actually have homes for them. It's not like they're ones that are just being sold to comic shops. They're actually they have people for them.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. It's not real.
Mm-hmm.
So I was getting this all the time. Yeah, we need to see the real numbers. We need to see the real numbers. And I got the whole, well, you're not a writer or you're a Twitter personality. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a Twitter personality. Well, this fucking Twitter personality just got a second reprint on her fucking first book. So,
I mean,
you gonna give me a book or not?
the thing that gets me though is just like you like look at something like Check Please, which is a webcomic that like has seen
Yep.
massive success, and like I'm not saying it's a one for one comparison, but it's representing it's a person of color creating it, a woman person of color creating it, who is telling a story about a gay hockey player. And I mean, like, that is it made like $350,000 in its second Kickstarter. Like, that's astounding, and it shows that there's a lot of interest. And I don't know, I feel like you're kind of ignoring the world if you don't think that those things are meaningful.
Yeah. Like, how is this not money?
Right.
I got to pay taxes on this shit. I'm stressing. Like,
You're
how
like, I wish I could ignore it being money during tax phase.
for real? Like, how are you saying this doesn't count?
Right.
Does it not count because I'm a black woman and this is a book about queer black women, queer black older women? Like, I'm not understanding, how does this not count?
Right.
Why do you not want these books? So now I'm showing you that these books sell.
Mm-hmm.
I'm showing you there's a hunger for these books. So what are you guys going to do about it?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to continue to put out nothing but white books by white creators with, like you're just making a fucking tuna sandwich on white bread with a whole bunch of mayo. Like that's it. You're doing ton like where's the seasoning?
Right.
It's time to season your comics. Like there's no reason why these books don't exist. You're saying, that whole shit with Marvel, oh, diversity doesn't sell. Really? That whole issue, that whole thing came out during the time the Bingo Love Kickstarter was happening.
Oh yeah, that was April, wasn't it?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
I guess that's proof that it wasn't true.
Exactly. I mean, what are you talking about? I
Yeah.
don't understand why these gatekeepers are shutting out marginalized creators.
Mm-hmm.
Like it makes no sense. Why did it have to take 75 years for Marvel to hire Nyla Magruder, who was the first black woman writer at Marvel?
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is Nyla did not get any credit. Roxane Gay got credit as the first black woman writer, but she's not. And that's no shade to Roxane. Roxane is awesome.
Right.
But the reason why Nyla wasn't, in my head, I believe the reason why Nyla wasn't, promoted as the first black woman writer is because Roxane comes from the literary world
Mm-hmm.
and she has more clout,
Mm-hmm.
just like with Tanahasi. Same exact thing. Like, I don't, there is no, why, like, there's so many black women writer, comic creators out there. You overlooked all of us and you went to the literary world.
Yeah. No,
Come
I,
on.
I do think that it's interesting. It's like I do think that speaks to another thing where it's a lot of times, regardless of gender or anything else, like a lot of times it's like comics are so less. They look at other mediums so lustfully that they're willing to like look externally before they'll look internally at people who are having success with like web comics or with other things like that, as if it's like making comics is a less legitimate art form than making, I don't know, books or something like that. And again, that's not, say anything negative about Roxanne or anything like that, but I just think that that's a lot of times how comics work, and it's really weird to me.
Hmm. Yeah, it's I don't know. I don't know. But then you look at Image and they don't have any black women writers with books. I'm the first one. 25 years. I'm
Mm-hmm.
the first one. It shouldn't be like that. There shouldn't be, in this day and age, there shouldn't be the first at this and the first at that. Like Sterling K. Brown, he's the first black person to win that SAG award. Like why are we still saying the first black person, the first like why?
Mm-hmm.
This should not still be happening. I mean, am I honored that I'm the first black woman writer with a book at Image? Yeah. But on the flip side, it's like, ew.
Yeah, you can still
You know?
appreciate that it's weird.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know. I just need these comic book publishers to just open their doors and stop being so, because we sell shit.
Mm-hmm.
We can write. Look at Spike.
Mm-hmm.
Spike Trotman, over a fucking $1 million in revenue from her Kickstarter books alone.
Yeah, she's a cottage industry by herself.
Yes.
It's incredible.
But
Yeah.
you mean to tell me her sales don't count? Those books don't count? Get your ass out of here. It's so half-ass backwards. I don't get it. I really don't.
I this is kind of an offshoot of this, but I did want to ask about the marketing side of it, because we've talked about how the Kickstarter part is kind of it's exhausting. It's a crushing element
Mhm.
of it, but the marketing part too. I mean, you're doing a podcast interview with me right now. You've done plenty of other interviews. I can tell you that because I've read a lot of them. You have a signing schedule that's coming up, and it's packed. Like, How important is that part of work in getting your name out there and getting the book out there to make sure that books like this find the success that you want and need it to have?
Well, for the Kickstarter, it it was a lot of work, a lot. Everything that I did when it came to marketing,
Mm-hmm.
Bingo Loves Kickstarter was everything was online. Everything was Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, do you guys know somebody? Hey, who do you know that works at Essence or Ebony or you know the logo like who do you know? Let me know so that I can get in contact with them and hopefully set up an interview.
Right.
That's how it went. Or there was someone who, like Reagan Gomez, she's an actress. Like if you find someone who's interested and they are someone of some kind of caliber, especially in the entertainment industry or even anywhere, and they retweet it, that means that's going to like 100,000 people, depending on how many people they follows them.
Right.
And that's some people. Let's say it's 100,000 people, and 400 of those people are interested, and they pledge, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
$1 or whether it's $20. And that's how my marketing for the Kickstarter went. It was all of it was through Twitter,
That's
finding
awesome.
people on Twitter and reaching out to them. We got featured on the Huffington Post, the Washington Post, the Logo channel. Like we had some really good sites who promoted the Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to Image, it was one of besides making sure my Kickstarter people got their books, one of the main things that I needed was I have to have more than just my books featured on white comic sites
Sure.
because they they're they're not my audience.
Mm-hmm.
Will they read the book? Yes, I'm sure they will. But they're not my core audience.
Mm-hmm.
When you have the comicbook.com and CBR and all those other sites, their audience is 19 to 49-year-old white men. That's not all my audience.
Right. The world's a lot bigger
So
than
I
that.
exactly. So I need to have my book marketed to romance sites and LGBTQ sites and teen sites, YA, black sites, women's sites. Like there's so many, you know, ways to advertise this book. But and that's the problem with any book that's out there. If you're only focusing on the comic book sites, you're missing a huge audience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a big reason why something like Saga got as big as it did is because it was featured on. I mean, I don't even know what was direct promotion, what was just earned media from places raving about it. But it's like I think a big part of that came the crossover hit part of it came from the fact it was featured elsewhere outside of comics.
Yeah.
And I say that as a person who's worked in comic or written about comics for a long time. I mean, I recognize that very well. I also work in marketing, and it's just like you don't succeed in marketing by just marketing to the same people over and over and over.
Exactly.
Um,
But some don't get it, and I actually hired a publicist. I hired Superfan Productions to be my publicist for Bingo Love.
mm-hmm,
And, Image does a great job too, but I also needed that extra push,
of course.
and you got to spend money to make money.
And they are good at pushing. I can say that, and I mean that with love. So to close,
Yes.
I actually I want to ask about something I read on your site, which I thought was awesome. You wrote about your personal and business mottos for 2018, both of which I find to be super important in finding greater levels of success these days. But like in comics, in everything, one is a closed mouth don't get fed, and the other is the art of saying no. Both of which are like immensely important for people in comics. Like, what made those so important to you for you as guides this year?
Well, when it comes, I actually have to do a part three because part three is secure the bag. Like
Mm-hmm.
part three is I'm behind. I'm a bingo love is taking up all my life. But securing the bag would be part three. And securing the bag is basically get your money.
Mm-hmm.
Do what you need to do to get your money, whether it's, writing or acting or just, trying to get that promotion at your job. Like, secure your bag, secure that money, and don't do things for free,
Mm-hmm.
which is, goes to the art of saying no. Sometimes you have to say no.
Right.
Like, because it's, you can get so many, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do this? Like, it's a lot, and sometimes you got to be like, nah, I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Because you just, and people don't think that it's okay to say no, but it, it really is.
Yeah.
They'll get mad and they'll get over it. Like, you'll be all right,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to say no. And when you are a marginalized person, you start to feel guilt because people are coming to you and they're like, oh, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? And you start to feel like you're ungrateful.
Mm-hmm.
But you shouldn't have to feel that way. We shouldn't have to be this way. And it's just, no, like there's so many, no, just say no. If you can't do it, say no. And if they're not paying you, you
Right.
definitely say no. Like,
Well, it is
no.
in a lot of ways like the securing the bag and the art of saying no and everything like those things are how you control your own power, and it's like how you
Yeah.
make sure you take care of yourself and you don't. I mean, look at all there's that Twitter account that's like just for exposure or whatever it is, where it's just all
Yes.
these people like trying. They're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna take care of you by getting your stuff in front of people. Like, can you pay me? Nope. And
Nope.
it's just like that sucks. There's a lot of people who will try to take advantage of you, and it's like you have to try to protect yourself any way you can. Those two are very good ways to do so.
Hmm. And a closed mouth don't get fed. It's just, okay. For example, yesterday I said that once Bingo Love, it was announced that Bingo Love got his second printing, I did just a little funny tweet and said, hey, Dark Horse and IDW, and I think I put Archie and somebody else. I was like, Bingo Love got a second printing. I want to write for you. Like, it's just, you never know what's going to happen, but if
Right?
you don't open your mouth and ask, you're not going to get an answer. So
Yeah.
it can be no, and that's cool, but you never know until you try.
And
You keep
every
your
no
mouth
is
shut.
yeah.
Exactly.
Every no is
Exactly.
one answer closer to a yes. I always try to say. I have to admit that's the one I have to learn from the most because I have a tendency of being all bashful and sheepish, and that kills you. I mean, it's like
Yeah,
you're not going to get opportunity unless you try to give yourself the opportunity.
exactly. Because nobody knows you want it if you just sit there and just,
Do your duty.
it's okay. Don't, like, no. I've been there. I've been the person who's just like, no, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. It's all right. Whatever. Whatever happens, happens. But it's not whatever happens, happens, because if it was, you'd open your mouth and you say something
Mm-hmm.
because you never know. Hey, Image, can I get a second book? No email response? Okay, cool. I'll try again later. Like, you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't say anything, it's always going to be a no. So I really want people to just start to open their mouth and ask for things. Just, ask for your promotion. Like, if you know you've done and you put in so much work and your boss doesn't see you, just open your mouth and ask, you know? Like, just, you don't know until you try. And I am all about a closed mouth don't get fed. Like, that is my personal model for so many years. I
Mm-hmm.
don't play that. I'm gonna open my mouth and I'm gonna ask, can I sign at your store? Yes. Thank you. No? Okay. You
Seems like a
know?
lot of people are saying yes these days.
Oh my God. So many people are saying, so many people are
You're
saying
like,
yes.
okay, you guys can say no. This is too much. Oh my god.
Now I need to know the art of saying no. Like, I'm securing the bag too much. Like, what is going on here? Yeah, it's been really awesome and insane how many signings I'm going to be doing. Like, I am starting February 3rd. It's just, I'm out. February 3rd, the 7th, the 9th through the 11th, which is my birthday. The 11th, I'm doing a signing. The 14th, No, the 13th I'm doing the signing. The 14th through the 19th or 20th I will be in California, and then the 28th through the 3rd I'll be in Seattle. I'm like, how many days left in February is that? I don't know, but I'm just going to be everywhere, and this is so wild that this is happening. I still can't believe it. And I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I'm very happy for your success, T. Thank you so much for coming on, and I will actually see you at Emerald City Comic Con. I'll be there, so I'll
Hey,
stop by
thank
and
you
say
so
hello and get my
much.
copy of Bingo Love signed.
Yes, I will be there. I don't know what my table is. I think it's NN something. I don't know, but I'll be there. I'll be there, and my what will I have? I'll have a scooter, and I will be signing away, and there'll be a bingo love sign, and I'll have bingo balls all on the table. So look for bingo.
That's excellent. Best of luck with everything. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with writer T. Franklin. You can find her on Twitter at Ms. T. Franklin. That's MIZ T. Franklin. On her website at tfranklin.com, and her work in the upcoming graphic novella Image with Jenn St. Onge, Bingo Love. If you're a fan of the show, there's some big news. Off Panel now has a Patreon. If you like the show and want to support it, consider backing it on Patreon at patreon.com/offpanel. There are fun rewards and insider information you get if you do. Big thanks to all my existing patrons, including Dan Garino, Jacob Sorelli, Ford Gilmore, David Baraldi, Evan Blazer, Andrew Scott, Brian McRae, Ira James Udaskin, Benjamin Birdie, Henning Allers, Modern Magic Stories, Nick Hall, Bruno Batista, Abraham Reisman, Adrian Diaz, Bobby Angus, Bjorn Basin, Darren Neely, John Hendrick, Steve Anderson, Michael Perlman, Bill Nall, Ian Maxfield, Cliff Chang, Benjamin Shipper, Colin McMahon, Chris Palmer, Maxwell Schmidt, Scott McGovern, Nathan Fairbairn, Kat McKenzie, Lou Iovino, Christopher Carter, Nicholas Kesslake, Greg Rucka, Ryan Mail, Adam Highfill, Nicholas Gardner, Andrew Corrigan, Fiona Staples, Chris Morris, Chris O'Halloran, Mark Abbott, Mike Murphy, Michael Shirley, Tom Barnett, Jim DiMonacos, Norbert, Nick Lowe, James Kaplan, and Mission Comics and Art in San Francisco. You guys are all the best. Don't forget to like the show on Facebook at /sketched. That's SKTCHD. Follow it on Twitter at @sketchcomic, or follow me at @slicefriedgold. Want more from Off Panel? Subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher, and give the show a rating or review while you're at it. A quick thanks to the band Wolfpack, whose excellent track Outro from their album Full Milch opens and closes the show now. Give them a listen as they're totally rad. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.